Hello and welcome to Legendary Champions. Today we're taking a look at the God of Thunder, Thor. Let's get to it. Alright, so we're going to start out on the alter ego side. We have Odin's son, and he's got 4 recovery, Asgard trait, and his ability is worthy. Action, search your deck and discard pile for the Mjolnir upgrade and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. Limit once per round. Hand size of 5 and hit points of 14. Okay, so the first thing interesting about this is we were all kind of wondering what they would do with heroes like Thor or even X-Men, which they could do something different later with them, but what they would do with alter ego side for heroes that don't really have an alter ego that they use readily in the comics. So it's interesting to see what they did here with Thor. I think it's cool. I'm fine with it. I think it makes sense. It's called Odin's son, but it's almost kind of an unworthy side, like you're kind of without the hammer. But not that you need the hammer to be Thor, but it's kind of a cool kind of back and forth. This is his maybe more chill side. It's more chill, the chill side of his identity, the statesman of sorts, and then the hero attacker is on the other side. So it's kind of a cool choice. They may do something different with other heroes like the X-Men in the future, but anyway, we haven't answered what they did on this one. So he's got 4 recovery, which is okay. It's a little low for his health points. I would have liked to see 5, and I think that's especially with as high as you can get his hit points, it's a bit of a detriment. It's hard to build him up back to full health easily and quickly. His ability is really cool. I think it's the better ability of the two on his hero side, where you can constantly, every turn, get Mjolnir. And so you can actually use that as a resource, get it back, use it as a resource again, or you likely want to keep it the second time, but you always have that option to kind of be using it back and forth as long as you can get it back into your hand. Then we've got the hand size. Thor's really interesting in that he's limited in his hand size, not only on his hero side like She-Hulk at 4, but also in his alter ego side. It's the only hero that's limited in his alter ego side so far. But he's got 14 hit points, which is just 1 less than She-Hulk, and he can actually get the highest so far in the game. Let's go ahead and flip over to his hero side and check out Thor. Of course, that's unique. And his stats are 1 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense. He's Asgard Avenger, and his ability Have at Thee, response after you engage a minion, draw 2 cards, limit once per phase, that's important. And then his hand size is 4 and hit points 14. So yeah, limited in hand size again. His stats are okay. You can build it up with Mjolnir though, to make him equal with She-Hulk, which is pretty much needed. The ability is kind of cool. It's thematic, but it does require you to, if you want those extra cards to always be kind of engaging new minions. It really works well with people like Ultron, who have a lot of smaller minions that you're going to get anyway. But when you're fighting kind of tougher minions like the Masters of Evil, they can really kind of, just trying to use this ability, trying to engage those type of minions to get this ability, or even mutagen formula, is really going to muddy up your board, and make it hard to deal with a bunch of, stronger minions all at once. Is going to make it hard to take on the villain. So you kind of have to weigh that out on whether or not it's a good idea to use that ability. Sometimes it just happens naturally, which is good, but you really need those 2 cards to make a big difference for you, or they end up not usually being worth it. So that is Thor. Okay, then we have his signature ally is Lady Sif. She costs 4. She's got 2 thwart, 2 attack, 3 hit points, and response after Lady Sif enters play, ready Thor or Odin's Son. And she's got a wild resource. This is his only wild resource card, so it's important. She's got really good stats. She's a little on the expensive side. The 2 thwart, 2 attack are good. They're very helpful. And her ability is really helpful for Thor. It allows you to get that extra heal in, or get a heal and attack off. And so if I can, find myself using her multiple times a game, just because she's a huge help to have on the board, especially for thwarting, which is not his strength. So Lady Sif, very cool card. Then we have Defender of the Nine Realms. Okay, we got 3 copies of this. It's 0 cost event, thwart event, hero action, thwart, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play engaged with you, remove 3 threat from a scheme. So you have to be able to get the minion out for this to work so that you can get the 3 threat off. It is a hero action, so you're going to have to use it on your hero side anyway, but the idea is that you use that, you're going to get your 2 card bonus and get 3 threat off a scheme. The problem with this, like I said, is that certain scenarios, it's getting a bigger minion in your way that's harder to deal with is, can often not help you. Or if you've got 2 or 3 minions, you just don't have the ability to deal with a bunch of strong minions at the same time. At least not most of the time. There are a couple occasions, but really most of the time you're only going to be able to deal with about 1 big minion at a time. So this is an interesting card. It is thematic. It does work with his ability, but it's kind of an exchange cost. It can kind of help you. It can kind of hurt you, and so you kind of have to gauge whether or not it's worth it. It's also his only thwart that he's really got besides his ability. Then we have 1 cost event for Asgard. It's an alter ego action. Search your deck and discard pile for a card with the Asgard trait and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. This is a really good card for searching out the card you need in his kit. There are also a few cards that are not in his kit that work for this as well, because there were several, a couple of allies and other cards with the Asgard trait that were added that were in like aggression and in the basic cards as well. So this is very helpful. I often use this to pull Lady Sif back out, so I can do a couple of things with Thor in 1 turn, and also she's a great thwarter, like I said. So really helpful card for his deck. All right, then we have 3 copies of Hammer Throw. This is maybe my favorite card in his deck. Very cool thematic card. It's 3 cost event, attack superpower. It says hero action, attack, exhaust Mjolnir, deal 8 damage to an enemy, and return Mjolnir to your hand. This attack gains overkill. So this is kind of an expensive card. If you compare it to something like Swinging Web Kick, you just get 8 for 3. It's just right away. You consider the cost of this, you have to have Mjolnir out, so you have to pay for that. You have to be able to exhaust it, return it to your hand, then you're going to have to pay again to get it back out. The added ability that this has is Overkill, which can be really good, because right now he's the only hero that has Overkill in his kit at all, and I think there's only 1 other hero card that has Overkill anyway. And it's a good solid 8 damage, so you can take out almost any minion in the game with 1 shot, And if they're not on the higher end, you can throw a couple extra damage on the villain as well. I've seen people use this as, kind of chaining enemies, but you're not supposed to do that. According to the rules for overkill, you're supposed to take that damage. Any overage damage is supposed to go directly to the villain. Unless they change that at some point, that's the way the wording is. But this is a very cool card. It's fun, just like with Cap's card, to just kind of take the hammer and just knock the minions out and hit the villain and throw some damage. And coming back to your hand, even though it's an extra cost to you, it's a cool thematic thing to do in the game, and just makes you feel kind of like the hero, throwing the hammer, pulling it back to your hand. It just feels cool, even if it costs you more to do it. So that's a great card, Hammer Throw. Alright, so let's put that down here. Then we have a very cool card here as well. It's one cost event, Lightning Strike. We got 2 copies of this. It is a superpower, hero action, spend X of the energy resources, deal X damage to the villain and each minion engaged with you. This attack ignores tough status cards if you have the aerial trait. So we'll see in a minute the aerial trait you get by having Mjolnir. What I think is cool about this is you don't have to have Mjolnir to use it like you do the Hammer Throw. Which is of course thematic because Thor has lightning abilities even without the hammer. So that's cool, but you do get a bonus if you have it, which is nice. One important thing about this card is you do have to be engaged with the enemies. It doesn't deal to everybody. So that does limit its power a little bit. But it is very cool. I like what they did with him and Cap is they kind of gave them 2 really big AoE abilities that have really good things about them. Like with Caps, you can hit as many as you can pay for, but you only do 4 damage to each one, right, with his shield toss. But with Thor and his lightning strike, you can, theoretically do an infinite amount of damage, but only to your enemies and the villain. Now, obviously, it's not going to be like super crazy amount of damage, but there are instances where you could get up into like 7-8 damage to anybody engaged with you, including the villain, which can be super thematic. And if tough status cards are out, it's really fun to be able to bypass those too. So 2 copies of that. And then we have Asgard, 3 cost support. It is unique. Has the Asgard trait, so you can pull this with the 4 Asgard card. It's a good option for it. It's a location, and it says you get +1 hand size. So that's cool. You can use this. It works both for the hero side and the alter ego side. So essentially this card takes away his limitation and makes him more the average hand size on both sides, which is 6 and 5. So getting this card out is great. It is expensive, and ideally you want to get it out as early in the game as possible. There are times where you may have other cards too, like Avengers Mansion or Helicarrier, that maybe you're able to get those out first, and those just work better for you. In that case, if it comes out too late in the game, you might just not want to use it, because one of Thor's issues is paying for stuff. He is low on his resource abilities. So there's one copy of that. Next we have 2 copies of God of Thunder. It's a 2 cost upgrade. Also has Asgard and title in it, which is cool. God of Thunder title. And it's hero resource, exhaust God of Thunder, generate a energy resource. So this is a very cool card, especially if you can get them both out. Really helps with his resource generation, which he just doesn't have a lot of. It also, just like Cap, is thematic and being able to add the extra energy resources so that you can boost up your lightning strike. and add to other boosted abilities with certain cards in different aspects. So it's a great card, but mainly I think what you're going to be using it for is just being able to pay for more stuff during your turn. But these are great to get out as soon as you can, just like Asgard. All right, next we have one cost upgrade, Mjolnir. Unique upgrade. It's restricted, just like Cap's Shield. And that means max 2 restricted cards per player, which is cool. It's kind of like 1 per hand, essentially. And then Thor gets +1 attack and gains the aerial trait. And I think I mentioned this during Captain Marvel's video, but I love when a card can just give you aerial trait just right away and you don't have to pay for it, like Iron Man. I understand that's thematic, but there's not always a ton you can do with aerial. But this works with his lightning strike, which is cool, and he has an aggression card that works with it as well that he comes with. But yeah, aerial's just cool. It's cool to give them aerial, and I'd love to see more cards come out that that benefit characters with aerial, or even see villains that like you need aerial heroes to fight them, or you're even maybe at a detriment if you're using aerial heroes. So I love that thematic aspect of it. As I said earlier when I was talking about his stats, you really want Mjolnir out as much as possible because it's not going to only going to give you aerial, but it's going to boost up your stats, make you equivalent with She-Hulk, and so being able to attack 3 in a turn is great, especially with his big attack cards, which a lot of them are kind of equivalent to people like Captain America or Spider-Man, and that you can hit a lot of people or hit for a lot of damage. But you can't, like, She-Hulk kind of does a lot of little hits, and that's how she's able to kind of equal that damage. He hits more like those other people. He tends to hit big in big hits, and he can hit really consistently if you have the right cards with him. But the more damage you do, the better. That's really, one of his biggest strengths. So having that out as much as possible is helpful, and obviously you need it for things like hammer throw. All right, and then our last card here is Thor's helmet. It's also unique. 2 cost upgrade. You get +5 hit points. So this card's great. It actually takes you to the highest total hit points right now in the game. I think Hulk's going to surpass that, but it gets him up there, and you can also add those other hit points on with like Endurance and Honorary Avenger to just boost him up and make him a big tank, and so it's cool if you can get that out. It's fun to have, but it is going to be hard to pay for stuff. So Thor, I'll defend Thor as much as I can. I enjoy playing him, but I recognize that he has his weaknesses. I continue to try to find ways around them, but he can just struggle against even people like Rhino. I've lost games against Rhino. It's hard to control the threat, and it's harder for him than just about anybody in the game right now. And he can also get blocked up by villains a lot. That's kind of tough. So yeah, thwarting is just his biggest problem, for sure. He's really only got his stats, and then Defender of the Nine Realms, which is already just inherently kind of, sometimes it can be really great for you, and sometimes it's just a trade-off of one bad thing into another bad thing. You may take that threat off and save yourself for a turn or two, but then you're slowing yourself down because you got another minion to deal with. And sometimes you can take him out right away, but sometimes you can't because you got other stuff to deal with, and you just can't pay for enough to get done as much as you want to. So getting that resource generation is also a big hurdle that he's got to overcome. Getting Asgard out, getting the God of Thunders out really helps, but you really, you want to be trying to find a way to get the bonus on 2 cards when it can help, or just finding any other way you can to pay for cheap things, pay for a lot of things, or find other ways to pay for cards, because that's definitely his biggest struggle. But he is fun to play. I mean, if you get the right cards, with the cards that he comes with are great. Honestly, his biggest thwarting advantage is to get out allies. He actually comes with 4, which is the most the pack comes with right now. I think so. Cap might come with the same, but he's a leadership and he's supposed to come with allies. Thor's aggression just theoretically should have less, and he's got 4 in that kit. And so he almost needs allies to help him thwart, or to play something like Justice so he can have those extra events. But like I said, his biggest strengths with the right cards and using his cards in his kit well is his high consistent damage. Spider-Man, has got that great card in Web Kick, but he doesn't have a lot of that's pretty much his damage card, right? He's got Black Cat, which can help him with his basic attacking, but that's really all he has. Thor, if you build him right, you can do an average of 8 damage a turn. But you've got to find a way to thwart too. And so, the balance there is the hard part about playing him. But being able to do 8 damage a turn is crazy. Like, nobody can really do that without building out some, putting a lot of build into their decks. And so the fact that Thor can do that just in the pack he's got right away is, his biggest advantage. He's really built to kind of be an Ultron assassin. He's built to kind of face tank Ultron, really. You can go in, you can hit him for big bouts of damage every turn. You can use Defender of the Nine Realms to take a threat off when you need it. But with his ability to draw the 2 cards, you'll be popping 2 turns, on your turn and on the villain turns pretty much every turn. So you're going to be getting extra resource, extra cards to play every single turn with Ultron. And then Lightning Strike can clear the board for you. Really built to be like an Ultron assassin. Not that you can't beat Ultron with other heroes, but he's built to kind of counter Ultron's best things. So, also the high health points are obviously an advantage because you can stay in hero mode longer, but it can be difficult when you switch back to heal a lot because you only heal for 4 at a time. So that's where Sif comes into play. Being able to heal twice in one turn can be a big advantage. So most valuable card, I'm going to say Mjolnir. That extra attack is great, and being able to give you the aerial so that you can get bonuses on other cards like Lightning Strike is cool. Also, the fact that on Alter Ego side you can use Mjolnir as a resource over and over again and just keep pulling it back every turn. It's not just the beginning of the turn, you can do it throughout the game. Just makes it an extremely useful card, and that's obviously very thematic. So definitely his best card. But Lady Sif and for Asgard are definitely a couple of my favorites, and Hammer Throw is just a lot of fun too. Weakest card I would have to say is Defender of the Nine Realms. There's a use for pretty much every card. I pretty much want to play every one of his cards every game I play him. But Defender of the Nine Realms is always this kind of trade-off. Like, sure, like as Thor, you want to challenge people, but it's hard to take on the cost of bringing out an extra minion and not only kind of muddying up your board and blocking you from hitting the villain in some cases, like with guard or whatnot, but you also have to deal with dealing through the encounter deck faster, which could put more acceleration tokens on, which makes it even harder for you to thwart. So it's always kind of a, is it worth it to use this card? And sometimes you feel like you have to because it's your only way to thwart, and then it ends up hurting you anyway. So it's, yeah, it's just not my favorite. But okay, let's take a look real quick at his obligation and nemesis. Obligation, Odin's Anger. Says, give to the Odin Sun player, you may flip to alter ego form, and then choose exhaust Odin Sun, remove Odin's Anger from the game, or discard Mjolnir from your hand or from play. You are stunned, discard this obligation. So as obligations go, this one really isn't too bad. If you go with the non-alter ego option and discard Mjolnir, that's, I mean, you pretty much can just get Mjolnir back right away anyway. So that's really hardly even a disadvantage. The being stunned is kind of bad because there's so much you want to be able to do with Thor. Being stunned pretty much locks you out for that turn, and Sif is like pretty much the only way to be able to unexhaust with him. So that's his obligation. So kind of standard, middle of the road. His nemesis set, Loki. Loki is 2 scheme, 2 attack, 4 health. That's okay. But then he's got the ability, Interrupt. When Loki would be defeated, discard the top card of the encounter deck. If that card is a treachery, heal all damage from Loki instead. This is pretty terrible. It makes him really sticky and hard to get rid of. I can't tell you how many times he pops out, and it feels like a game over. He will stay on your board, he'll throw a ton of extra threat on, and you can try to kill him, but he might just stay anyway. And he's not hard to kill, but he's hard to make stay dead. And yeah, it works. But as far as, being thematic, but it can be a game ender for sure. Then his scheme, which may be even worse, is Family Feud. When revealed, place 1 additional threat here for each Asgard card in play. It's got the acceleration token, which makes it harder to thwart, and comes out with just 2 to start, but then you're adding 1 for each Asgard card in play, which Loki's card is Asgard, Thor's is Asgard, pretty much every upgrade he has is Asgard. So if you do this late in the game and you're building up like you should, you could get slammed with like 11 threat, which I have before, and Thor just has no way to deal with that. And so you're pretty much forced to kind of face tank your way through the villain, which is an important strategy for Thor. But it's hard to do, for sure. It's kind of a 50-50 shot on whether or not you're going to be able to do it. So then he's got 2 copies of Frost Giant, 1 scheme, 3 attack. Frost Giants come out with toughness, and they also have the boost ability. The villain is attacking, and this attack deals damage to a character, stun that character. So that's pretty brutal. Another way to stun Thor, which again is just going to slow you down. And also they have toughness. They do only have 4 health, which means, you could use the lightning strike on them, bypass the toughness, and they have the same health as Loki, which means you could potentially kill them all in the same turn. And then his last card, Trickster, is a treachery. It says, when revealed, discard the top 3 cards of your deck. Place 1 threat on the main scheme for each different card type discarded this way. So you can see, a lot of what they're trying to do is throw extra threat on you because you're already struggling with that anyway. By far, Loki is the toughest nemesis to date. I think that makes sense because Loki's just such a powerful villain anyway. And I hope we do see him as a main villain. I'm sure we will at some point. But he's by far the hardest nemesis. And with Thor being a challenging hero to play, like I said, it can be a game ender for sure when that comes out. And I once had him come out 3 games in a row, and it was pretty much dead to rights, every one of them. So, very rough. There's kind of 2 strategies, like I said, you want with Thor. There's really that face tank strategy. You go in, you try to basically kill the villain you know, in just a handful of turns before they're able to thwart enough to beat you. Or there's the kind of slow build up, you know, where you can use Mjolnir a lot to kind of help you pay for resources and slowly build up your Asgard and your God of Thunders and really, you know, get a lot of stuff going on, get a thwarting game, get a lot of resources going. You can do that. It just takes time to do it. And so there's kind of those two strategies. And depending on what villain you're facing, you have to decide what is best for me. What's the best way to do it for this villain. So Thor's cool. He's a lot of fun to play. I think he might be my favorite hero to this point, but he is a challenge for sure. So be aware of that when you're going in. He's not going to be super OP, feeling like Captain America is right away. He's very nuanced, at least right now. They've kind of hinted that he's going to get better in time, but at least right now he's still really nuanced, and you have to kind of learn the ropes with him. Trivia question to answer for last time was, who did Miss Marvel get her name from? So she got it from Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, who actually used to be known as Miss Marvel, and then kind of got promoted to Captain Marvel. So that was her favorite hero in the comics, Miss Marvel's, and so she took Kamala Khan took the name Miss Marvel from Carol Danvers as kind of an homage to her. And then your trivia question for Thor is, what was Thor's original alter ego? So we talked about what his alter ego might have been, what they would make it. Well, he started out with an alter ego at first, and they kind of phased that out of his lore as they went on through the comics. So that's Thor. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and stay legendary, champions. Bye.